What's up, everybody? Welcome back into the episode of The Lawyer You Know, and today we've got a verdict in the Kelsey Fitzsimmons case. Will it be guilty? Will it be not guilty? Let me know what you think in the chat. Let's get to it. All right, so I have court up here. And we are going to let it roll. So you'll be seeing it if there's any movement on the way I'm looking at it. It's the left side of my screen. I don't know if it's on the right side of your screen, but regardless, we have court. So when there is movement, we will turn the sound on and hear what the judge has to say. So what we are expecting is the judge to come back to court and to ask everybody if they're ready and to read his verdict, and then I think he will give his reasoning. I think he will do it in that order. Some judges do it in the opposite order, which is more like one of the orders that they read, right? So sometimes, or when they're giving sentencing, they'll give all their reasoning prior to what the actual sentence is. So they'll say, I took this into account and this into account, and I took this as an aggravator or this as a mitigator. And then at the end, they say, okay, I'm going to impose the sentence now, and then they impose the sentence. So it really depends on the judge. But I would expect, because it is a verdict and a trial, they'll read that first, but every judge does things a little bit differently. John, why don't you run one more poll as to what everybody believes the verdict will be? So not necessarily how you would vote, but what do you think this verdict will be? Because that's what I'm most interested in. And when we hear the verdict, it's going to be different and more enlightening than usual, because usually when a jury gives a verdict, we don't get their reasons why. And a lot of people think, oh, this jury's stupid, or this jury didn't read it right, or this jury did this wrong or that wrong. And of course, there are always people that think there are going to be appellate issues based on what the jury said. Now, the interesting part here is, depending on the case law, the post-trial arguments can be a little bit different. If the judge puts his reasoning on the record, which he said that he would, and there's something legally deficient in that reasoning that could potentially, depending on their jurisdiction, depending on what it is or what it was, bring up other appellate arguments that are also different than when a juror gives a verdict, right? And a jury gives a verdict, and even if a juror gives an interview afterwards, it's not on the record, it's not part of the record, it's not something that can be on the record as part of appeal. My husband heard Peter and stopped. He said he will listen to Peter's stream. Well, Scouty's husband, what's up, brother? So in these scenarios, one of the other interesting things is, and the question I get all the time from people is, can they have a redo or appeal it and say, actually, we want to do this in front of a jury? And for those of you who've been following trials long enough or understand anything about the rules or legalities or how we set up rules and why we set them up this way, that answer is no. The defense cannot win an appeal by saying, we made a mistake, we wish we would have done this in front of a jury, after the judge brings back a guilty verdict. You do not get two bites at the apple. The same is true where, if it's a not guilty verdict, the state can't say, oh, well, we want to retry this in front of a jury. Doesn't work like that. Obviously, double jeopardy would attach. And they would not be able to try this case again. MLC said, perfect time, just finished the last live. Yeah, I was able to get a lot of work done in the last, I don't know, what was it, hour and a half since the last slide. So that was good. I'm glad we got a little break in there. It was able to let me do this before I've got to leave after this to go to Brooks' football game. So I've got a hard stop here on this one. Here while at work, and just wanted to say I appreciate you coming back to watch with us. I'm nervous it will be guilty, but I hope not guilty. May God bless her life. I hope God blesses her life as well. Yeah, this is one, I will say my opinion. I was more confident this was going to be a not guilty verdict prior to the comments I heard from the judge after closing. Now I would say I'm unsure what I think the judge is going to do. I think if you scrutinize this evidence highly enough with everything contextualized, that there's not enough to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. But I have seen this I have tried, when I say this exact case, I clearly don't mean all the same exact details, but this exact type of case with this exact type of evidence on the prosecution side, and it was a quick guilty verdict. So to act like a law enforcement's testimony cannot be enough to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt would be not a very intelligent way to discuss this case in this scenario. So if it is a guilty verdict, to me, that means the judge found law enforcement to be credible, corroborating each other, maybe the bullet being in the chamber being objective evidence to corroborate what the law enforcement said, and not buying what Kelsey said because how did the bullet end up in the chamber if she didn't rack it? Whatever it may be. There are reasons, because there are certain cases where no reasonable finder of fact could ever vote one way or the other. I don't think this is one of those cases. Legally speaking, from my education, my experience, the things that I have seen and tried, there are jurors that could decide on either side of this, or fact finders like the judge. Have you seen Turtle Boy's post about the court officer saying the police have priority seating over Kelsey supporters? Is this allowed? I don't. So with anything, as a lawyer, I always would like to say it depends. I would need more information. Do they mean Noonan? Like the victim in the case does get priority seating over Kelsey's supporters? And are we talking Kelsey's supporters or Kelsey's family? Because I think that would also be different. So I would need more information. It would, if it's just people supporting police versus people supporting Kelsey, they should not be giving precedent to people supporting police. Maxos, thank you so much for covering. Wait, they can't appeal at all? Of course they can appeal. Absolutely they can appeal. Absolutely. All the same things. If you thought the judge, if Bradel was like, I wanted this evidence to get in, and the judge said no, and I think that was wrong, and that's reversible error, you can absolutely appeal. Just like you would appeal any other trial. I just mean sometimes when we hear juror interviews afterwards and the jury's like, oh, I thought, that I didn't like the color of her shirt, so that's why I didn't find her credible. We'll be like, oh, that's a problem. Appeal. Even though that's not part of the record, we're not going to have that sort of discussion, Max Oz, after the fact. That's what I meant. Loopy Lass, welcome to the membership crew. And Netwoman, thank you so much for gifting 10 Lawyer You Know memberships. So people are saying Bettero is in the first row. That's interesting. I know he works with Bradel. I don't know. I know he works with Bradel on Turtle Boy's case, I should say. I don't know if he has a connection to the Kelsey Fitzsimmons case. You guys can let me know that. Olivia's new to the channel from this case. Awesome. Welcome, Olivia. We're pumped you're here. Peter, could it be guilty with no time? Yes. Well, I shouldn't say yes. I know that she's been in prison for a certain amount of time, and I think this has up to 5 years. So because it's Massachusetts, I don't want to say confirmed yes or no because, I would not say that I'm an expert on all the ins and outs of sentencing in Massachusetts. Obviously, I am in Florida. So theoretically, yes, I think it's possible for her to get little to no time in prison and no quote unquote punishment other than what she's already been through, obviously, with a guilty verdict. A lawyer could spin that as a win, right? Like my client's looking at 5 years and she gets to go home free today. Like I could understand how a lawyer would make that feel like a win. It's definitely not worst case scenario for Kelsey Fitzsimmons, right? 5 years in prison would be worst case scenario with this case, I believe. But I wouldn't feel great about it. I wouldn't feel great about it because that guilty verdict is going to make it very difficult. I saw some people saying she wants to be a lawyer guilty of a felony in most jurisdictions. That's very, very difficult to overcome. I had some buddies that didn't even want to apply to the Florida bar because we're so strict, and they had like a weed charge back in college. And so I think they went to Georgia and got barred. But yeah, I mean, there was multiple people that were worried about certain charges. Felony like this, not top notch. Not top notch. That's not what I meant. Not easy to get over to become a lawyer or, do a lot of different jobs. Justin, why did they not wear body cams? I don't think they had body cams. Chris K said, Peter, do you think the chat could be wrong? We have only had one other bench trial, and that was a slam dunk. I am concerned. I absolutely think this is one of the cases that I think I brag on the chat, all the time. And let me put it this way. It's the same way, and I don't mean any offense by this because I say this about myself when we're talking about a jury trial. I think the chat, has more of their finger on the pulse of juries than they would judges. That's not to say they're wrong about this because I think it's not guilty. I think mostly the chat thinks it's not guilty as well. I just think you guys think it's like 99 percentile not guilty, easy slam dunk. I would say it's more like 55, 60% in the not guilty camp, or maybe even less. But, from my perspective, if the state can't get to that very high burden of a moral certainty of guilt here, it's going to be a not guilty for me. And that's more of the analysis in my brain. So it's not to say the chat, would be wrong. I just think that this is a different scenario, right? And if you are wrong, I wouldn't hold it against your voting record because when it comes to juries, you guys, you know exactly what they're thinking and feeling. Peter, thanks for recapping this. Has been interesting to see a bench trial. I think the bull crap in the chamber might, bullet, sorry. I read that as something else. Might sway the judge to guilty. Yeah, I don't know. We don't know what he's going to say, but I think he's going to tell us. I also have to figure out, I had these swapped. Whatever, we'll figure it out. We're still trying programs, and I think our members only live for March might be tomorrow, by the way, for all the new members. Chris K, thank you for gifting 5 Lawyer You Know memberships, and your next super chat is the memberships are in honor of Netwoman. That's amazing. Thank you, Chris, and thank you so much to Netwoman, and we love it. We love her. What was I saying? Oh, our members only live for all the new members, I think, is going to be us testing out some new streaming platforms because we've been going through kind of different things here and there. And there are some other people that might be starting YouTube channels that have been asking me which ones we've been working on. And I've been, sharing what's worked and what hasn't and the difficulties in this. So we'll see where we end up landing. And I'm happy to share whatever works for us. I know Emily has built out her own, which is amazing. And she said, she's seen some issues with that as well. I would love nothing more than to one day pay for a subscription to be using Emily D. Baker's streaming platform. I would love if that day would ever come. So I hope it does. I know she's working hard on it, but there's so much going on in the background and there's so many things to fix and something goes wrong and it's a constant thing. Like a trial is a living, breathing thing, so is a live stream. Azam said, verdict, watch at 2 a.m. It feels like my first time watching the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard. I'm feeling nostalgic. LOL. Thanks for covering on Daddy Daycare, Peter. Yes, happy to. Imagine that, right? People waiting on a verdict and it's like, okay, 2 p.m., but 2 a.m. The latest verdict I think I've had is like 10 p.m. And actually, I think that was a hung jury, which was just miserable. On a very hard-fought criminal case. And then they ended up dropping the charges afterwards, which I was appreciative of. Welcome to the new members. And thank you to Jen, the law nerd. You know, a nice combo there. I like that. I'm very interested. Everybody hit that like button before we get to the verdict. Just so we can get that out of the way before we're all reacting to the verdict, whichever way it's going to be. I don't know also if they're doing sentencing immediately or if they're going to wait, do sentencing later. I would assume sentencing later, but I don't know that to be true. So that's another kind of open question that we don't know the answer to. So there was a body cam, present in the interview with Noonan, and they did use it. And there's an audio recording, I believe, which is what I got from the questions from Bradel, but they didn't point it at him. I mean, again, to me, I think that's horrible. I think that should be held against the state. It should. Like to say, oh, it's the law enforcement and not the Commonwealth. Like that's the state prosecuting and investigating and proving crimes. If one of them screws up, they all have to eat it, my opinion. What happens to someone being placed in custody that suddenly has a gun in their hands in normal police interactions? It depends. If the gun's pointed at law enforcement, it's going to end kind of like this one ended. But if you just mean they have it and they, have a carry conceal, it just gets confiscated. I don't really know what you mean. Sorry. Memberships gifted in honor of the 20-year anniversary of the loss of my good friend. Needed something uplifting for this day. Hugs to all. Well, Jen, I appreciate you being here with us. I appreciate you sharing that with us. And to all the new members, big thanks to Jen, the law nerd, and another Jen Kess. Thank you so much for gifting 5 Lawyer memberships. So John is sending me updates on the polls, and this is the most votes we've ever had on a poll for this trial, and it's 78, almost 80% not guilty, 20% guilty as to what you actually think the verdict will be. Pity Mom said, finally got to a live verdict with the Lawyer fam. Going in for back surgery next month. Could use prayers for the Lawyer fam. Absolutely, Pity Mom, and keep us posted. Back surgery, there's all different kinds. Some more invasive than others. I have a lot of clients who have been through it. And with great doctors and great work on PT, you can have really great results. So that's what we're going to be praying for. And hopefully you're on the mend soon. And here's a promise I can make to you. There will be content for you to watch while you're laid up and recovering, or while you're pushing and doing some PT. There will be content to keep the time passing for you. You can bet on that. What the chart won't say, thank you so much for 10 Lawyer You Know memberships. We're going to have a ton of new members here in our Members Only Live, maybe tomorrow. We haven't locked that in. I was planning on doing a verdict reaction tomorrow because I figured this was going to happen maybe when I was at Brooks' football game. Instead, it happened much earlier in the day, so we were able to get a live reaction together. It's been a little while. Wait, what's the last verdict we've done live together? Because I've missed the last couple verdicts live. I don't think I did Brendan Banfield live. I don't think I did Corey Richins live. I can't remember the last one we did live together. Joanne, Peter, I think as a mom, this is just one of the many hurdles that Kelsey still has to overcome. Getting her son back, her life back, her mental health. It seems like she's already done a lot of work on her mental health. So I'm hopeful for that. And I think that, you know, she's on the mend, and that's great. And so that'll be really important, really important. John said Donna Adelson. Okay, here we go. We're back. Let me swap this. It won't let me swap it. All right, we're fine.
77 CR 311. All counsel and the defendant are present.
Thank you. So before I begin, I'd like to speak to our audience members. I understand that this case has generated a lot of passion and emotion, but you must remember that this is a courtroom and not a sports arena. When I announce my verdict, you must not act out emotionally or visibly or audibly react.
That makes me feel more like it's guilty. I'll just tell you. That's what it makes me feel like. I could be wrong. That's just the feel now.
So you should leave the courtroom if you believe that you will be unable to maintain your composure.
That's a good tip from Judge M in the Richins trial. He said the same thing.
I'd like to start with a few introductory words. Let me say this. This is not in my script. This has been one of the more exhausting, hardest things I've had to do as a judge, as an attorney.
He seems kind of nervous, too.
And so, as the lawyers know, unlike when a judge presides over a jury-waived trial in a civil case, there is no requirement that a judge explain their reasons for reaching a verdict after a criminal bench trial.
And we talked about it. They don't have to. Some of them do. Some of them don't. Sounds like he's going to read his reasoning before the verdict.
I do so in this case because I think that Ms. Fitzsimmons, Officer Noonan, and all the people involved in the tragic events of June 30, 2025 deserve an explanation. Next, I'd like to take the opportunity to publicly thank and commend the attorneys in this case. They all did an exceptional job presenting the evidence and conducting themselves in an extremely professional and civil manner. And they did so under the public spotlight in an emotionally charged case. I commend you. To the extent that any of the prosecutors and attorneys may be vilified or subjected to public scorn for simply doing their jobs, in this case, I say that any such scorn is unfair, unwarranted, and simply wrong. These prosecutors and attorneys fought hard but performed their solemn jobs fairly with the utmost civility, and professionalism. They served as a shining example of our adversarial system in operation. Now, I'd like to publicly acknowledge the crucial and often thankless role that police officers perform, a role that Ms. Fitzsimmons...
This is kind of weird. Like, this is not the reasoning for his verdict. This is very weird to me.
herself, like Officer Noonan, willingly and selflessly performed for citizens of North York.
There's Better, by the way, in the pink shirt at the bottom corner.
For this, you should be thanked, not disparaged. For those that think that serving as a police officer is easy, or that officers don't care or take pride in their work, I say with more than 3 decades of experience in the criminal justice system that you are naive, misinformed, and sadly mistaken. The work of police officers is especially fraught with peril today because of our exceedingly cynical, polarized atmosphere where our citizenry often believes that there is a conspiracy under or around every corner.
Uh-oh.
I saw no evidence of a conspiracy in this case. What I saw was dedicated public servants like Officer Noonan and his fellow officers doing the best they could under tragic, rapidly evolving emotional circumstances. What I also saw was a young woman, Miss Fitzsimmons, who was also a dedicated public servant, react to sudden, confusing, and heartbreaking news. Now let me turn to the evidence and the law. Our system of justice requires me to decide this case solely on the law and the evidence. So the only things I have considered in reaching my verdict are the 98 exhibits admitted during the trial and the testimony of the 11 witnesses that testified here in open court. While it may be cold and uncaring, our system of justice demands that emotion, sympathy, and concern for the consequences of my decision play no role in my decision. As for the law, in order to prove Ms. Fitzsimmons guilty of the crime of assault by means of a dangerous weapon, the Commonwealth must prove the following 3 things. We lawyers call these things elements beyond a reasonable doubt. First, that Ms. Simmons committed an assault on Officer Noonan. Second, that Ms. Simmons intended to commit the assault. And third, that the assault was committed by means of a dangerous weapon. The sole issue before me is whether the Commonwealth proved each of these 3 elements beyond a reasonable doubt. And more specifically, under the circumstances of this case, the narrow issue before me is whether the Commonwealth proved beyond a reasonable doubt that Ms. Fitzsimmons pointed a firearm at Officer Noonan for any perceptible amount of time. What is not before me are the legality of the issuance of the restraining order to Mr. Alain, the reasonableness of the procedure used by the police to serve the restraining order, the legality of Officer Noonan's use of force, and issues regarding the custody of Caden. It is not my place to decide these issues or even mention my thoughts on them. I am thankful for this because my role has been hard enough. What has made my job especially difficult in this case is that by and large, I found the testimony of Officer Noonan and Ms. Fitzsimmons to be credible on the material and relevant.
Then it has to be not guilty. If you found both of them credible, meaning including Kelsey Fitzsimmons, it feels like it has to be not guilty then, but it's not the feeling I'm getting from him.
Points. In my experience, this is unusual and somewhat perplexing. On the one hand, Ms. Fitzsimmons credibly testified that she never pointed a firearm at Officer Noonan. On the other hand, Officer Noonan testified that not only did Ms. Fitzsimmons point a gun at him, that she also pulled the trigger. Both agree that it happened in seconds near a narrow doorway, and the crime scene photos show that the door frame was made narrower by a clothes rack containing police uniforms that was to Officer Noonan's left. The door frame was also made, the door frame was made still narrower when Officer Noonan used it to take cover when he drew his firearm. During the closing argument, the Commonwealth argued that it is scientifically and physically impossible for Ms. Fitzsimmons' story to be true because there was a bullet in the chamber, and she said that Officer Noonan shot her without her ever racking the slide after pulling the trigger. I disagree that the evidence reflected that the only way to chamber a round would have been to pull the slide under those circumstances.
Okay, maybe it's going the other way. Now he's got me on the edge of my seat. I truthfully do not know which way this is going.
However, even if I assume that Ms. Fitzsimmons lied about not wrapping the slide, the does not detract from the adamancy and credibility of her testimony that she never pointed the gun at Officer Newman, about which he was
It has to be not guilty if he believes that.
equally as adamant that she did. Perhaps the Commonwealth could have easily met its burden if the officers had been wearing body cams. But under these circumstances, I am left with a reasonable doubt.
Let's go.
And I am duty-bound to find that the Commonwealth has not met its burden to prove that Ms. Fitzsimmons committed an assault by means of a dangerous weapon on Officer Newman. And my verdict is, and it must be, not guilty. With that, I will hand the...
It was a very strange, very long-winded, very verbose lead up, but now it's like, okay, that makes sense. He wanted to make sure to coddle is probably the wrong word, but make sure nobody hated Noonan, or he wanted to make sure this was not an indictment on Noonan's testimony. But as soon as he said he found both of them credible, it has to be over. And then he kept going and he was like, this is like exactly what we've been saying the entire breakdown. This is where, honestly, it's like where a bench trial is just different than a jury trial, because if you can push out so many things that have emotional attachments to them and you look at it like a lawyer, you can see it just like him. And people get annoyed at me for not being like, Noonan's a liar, scumbag, throw him in prison. But it's like, this is kind of the vibe, and this is the feeling, and this is the reaction of how lawyers look at these facts. Doesn't mean I hate Noonan. Doesn't mean I think, Noonan should be in prison. I know a lot of you guys do. I don't. The judge was clearly making sure everybody didn't. But as soon as he said, I found both of them to be somewhat credible, it has to be not guilty. We'll keep listening, but that was a big reaction. Big reaction.
I will hand you signed verdicts to Mr. Wayne and ask that he advise Ms. Fitzsimmons of her statutory rights.
Ms. Fitzsimmons, could you please stand? On docket 2025, 77 CR 311, count 001. The court having returned a verdict of not guilty, the court orders it to be discharged of this indictment, and this indictment only, and go thereof without delay. Kelsey Fitzsimmons, as required by statute, I must inform you that the records regarding the charges for which you have been found not guilty will be sealed by the Commissioner of Probation and by the court unless you notify the Commissioner of Probation in writing within 10 days that you do not want those records sealed. To request that those records not be sealed, you may use the request not to seal form posted on the trial court's webpage on mass.gov, or a copy of which I will hand to your counsel. I cannot accept the form here in court. You must submit it to the Commissioner of Probation at the address provided on the form. You understand?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Court is in recess.
All right. Please exit quietly, and thank you once again. Thank all of our other sessions still going. Please be quiet on the way out. Folks, you don't mind just helping me over this back over here. Tight space here.
I just want to see if anything happens while they exit, and then we'll talk as soon as everybody exits, and then we'll leave it up on mute in case Bradel does a press conference outside.
Well, when you're ready, you will.
Bradel was like bouncing his legs, by the way. Like you could just feel the tension and the nerves. Lawyers hate nothing more than when you're totally out of control just waiting. And the like adrenaline come down right now for him is unexplainable. It's like a great feeling, but also like you feel like the energy's getting sucked out of you at the same time. And by the way, all of the judge's discussion about what he's not deciding and all this stuff, while it made me nervous, it's like that's why you pick a bench trial. You put that stuff aside and you just rule on what is in front of you. Really great job by this judge. I think he protected the record, obviously. And not just because I agreed with him. If he would have gone the other way, I think it would have been harder to believe based on the testimony, the credibility of the testimony, and the corroboration or lack thereof. But the way he got there, it's pretty much why you choose a bench trial. Like, this is the reason why. I'm also confident that all of you have been following the case from the beginning, and we're talking about all the stuff that happened to her pre-trial and how horrible it was and how horrible she was treated. I can understand the righteous anger you would have now, right? I don't know the full extent of it. I just know a lot of people were complaining, and you get all the way to this moment and she's not even guilty of an assault, let alone an attempted killing.
Some of you guys want to start going down so you can get people more. Folks, I don't mean to put speed to what you got going on here, but we have other places we need to be as officers. So, you guys are more than welcome to use that room. You guys can use it in there.
Yeah, I need to get this. That's not right. Yeah. That's not right.
It's on. All right, I'm going to mute this. I'll leave it playing. I will go back to this. All right, so we can leave that on while we talk a little bit. I know people have questions and a lot to discuss here. Interested in a collab with Papa T on this one, Go March Madness. So he has been out of town the whole time on a cruise. I know he has not been watching this trial, so I don't think we'll get much from him on this one. I'm such an empath / emotional person. I just want her to be okay and be able to heal with her child. Also, chat, you know, is such a beautiful space that speaks to your character, Peter. Thankful for you, your team, and your family. Thank you so much. I can't really take much credit for it. The chat is the chat, but I appreciate it, Jen, so much, and you're a big part of it. Sounds like he's prepping law enforcement for a not guilty. Well, what the chart won't say, this comment was made prior to him reading the verdict, and you were 100% correct. I don't trust this judge. Well, my guess is this was also before the verdict was read. Mary Smith said, I'm nervous. I get that. Oh, is it over? Oh, yeah, they ended the stream. No, we're not going to watch any fantasy football today. Maybe later. Maybe another time. Okay, let's see. What else we got then? He's trying to prevent retaliation against him. I think after now we know, is that up on the screen? Oh, there's like a delay. I think after now that we know why this happened, I think he's trying to protect the reputation of the officers that were there. Noonan, Houston, Daly. I think he was trying to protect their reputation because he knows the negative backlash they're going to get from this verdict. It won't be happening on this channel, like I said, but I can promise you there's going to be a lot of negative backlash. Throw him in prison. This is what he did. Some of you guys may support that. Again, I don't know all the background, everything in the background information, but what happened at this trial, I wouldn't go that far personally. But I think not guilty was 100% the correct verdict. Now, as with anything, I am open to changing my mind if I get more information. And I may feel differently once I have more information, and I totally understand that. And I understand I'm working with limited information. Kim, thank you so much for gifting 5 Lawyer You Know memberships. So yeah, and I don't blame anybody for how they feel, because especially if you know a lot more than I do about this case. Gray said, chat, you know, right again. Yes, you guys were spot on. Thanks for teaching us to look at the facts and not go by feelings. Thanks for the second live too. And maybe I just don't give you guys enough credit. Maybe you do look at it like lawyers at this point, or like quasi, somewhere between a lay person and a lawyer, because I will tell you, the chat, you know, is not your normal juror anymore, right? They're your educated juror. They understand more about the process. And frankly, they are part of my mission to work and get as many people in America to be jurors like the chat you know. That's honestly, that's what, when you hear my TED Talk, you'll hear that is what I want. It's basically trying to convince people to be more like the chat you know, truthfully. And you'll hear that. I think they said we're going to get it sometime in April. Hopefully you guys can hear it. Wow, getting there was rough. Thank you, Judge. Yeah, like the whole wind up, I was like, this is very unusual. But this was an unusual case. He felt bad. And it almost felt like he felt bad for Kelsey Fitzsimmons, but I almost feel like he felt more bad for the other officers because he's like, legally, this is what I have to do. And I hope there's no negative repercussions on you because of it. But it's the right call, and I need to do what the right call is. Other people were asking me, do I think he'll be scared at backlash from law enforcement for making this decision? I say, no, I think he's going to do what he thinks is right, regardless of what the backlash is. We need a better PETA collab recap. Yeah, he was in the courtroom. I'll hit him up. We'll see. I'm definitely going to do some collab with somebody about this case. Peter, thanks for your coverage, especially on a busy day. What a nerve-wracking verdict read. Yeah, it was so long, and those are the worst ones because you're just like, get to it. I can't imagine what it was like sitting in Bradel's chair or, of course, Kelsey's chair. Do judges admonish themselves from social media? Meaning stay away from it? My guess is yes. Peter, what is your take on this judge and the Afro-Man judge who seem to have main character syndrome? Are cameras exposing this or creating this? I didn't watch the Afro-Man trial, so I really don't know anything about that. I do not feel like this judge had main character syndrome at all. And also, there was a big difference between this case and the Afro-Man case. This was not a jury trial. So judges always talk more and are way more involved in a bench trial because they don't have to be careful about what they say about, tainting a jury. Like if the jury feels the judge is leaning a certain way, he doesn't have to worry about that. Much more open. So different circumstances. And again, I can't compare it to Afro-Man. I did not get that feel from this judge. There was definitely a long, verbose reading of the verdict, but Grace, was Bradel a public defender? I don't think so. I think he's a private lawyer. I'm like 99% sure, but I'm not positive, so I can't say that. Why do you think all the cops were there? To show support, to say this is what we think, to say we want to be on the right side of justice, support their colleague, obviously not their other colleague sitting in the defendant's chair, or maybe some were. Do you get anything if you sat in jail and then found not guilty? Not just because you're found not guilty. If you were wrongfully arrested or somebody lied to get you there, there are certain circumstances that you can have a civil lawsuit if you are thrown in jail or arrested wrongfully, but not automatically. Not every not guilty turns into a civil lawsuit. I'm so happy for the verdict. I hope she becomes a lawyer and fights for moms, just like in her situation. I hope she gets her baby next. Yes, I hope if it's all safe and clear and everything gets pushed out of the way from things that she was wrongfully accused of, I hope justice prevails in all of the different cases here and that everybody involved is safe. Can KF sue the police department for her medical pain and suffering now that she's been found not guilty? So she can. This not guilty verdict does not automatically mean she's going to win. She would have the burden of proof flipped, not all the way because it's not beyond a reasonable doubt, but she would have to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that he wrongfully shot her. Was she in custody up to the trial? I know she was in custody at some point. I don't know if it was up to the trial. None the wiser. Thank you for gifting 5 Lawyer You Know memberships. Peter, at some point you need to cover her bail revocation hearing. It's heartbreaking. Yeah, I know that a lot of this was going on and going around Twitter and people had questions. I just couldn't comment on it because honestly I didn't read, watch, or follow anything up until this trial. If Kelsey watches this, I just want to wish her good luck, recovery, and a happy future. I found her sincere and good-hearted. Her credibility on the stand and providing a reasonable alternative to me was the nail in the coffin. That's what did it, right? Because if she was not credible and she took the stand and there were lies and she refused to give on things and she would give details that just weren't true, like the dog, if that turned out to just be, out of left field, that would have been a problem. But the fact that she was extremely credible is, to me, the biggest difference in this case. And when comparing the two stories, hers seemed more plausible, more logical, and more credible than Noonan's. And at that point, there's not really a whole lot of analysis that you need to do. And while it was the best argument the Commonwealth could make, like the judge said, the whole racking thing, it's interesting he brought that up because that's the same thing that came to my head. That's the best thing they have. But honestly, when you compare the two testimonies and stories, it's just not guilty is legally the appropriate verdict in this case. Nurse of interest, a 50-bagger in honor of the verdict. Thank you so much. You're the best. Nice job, chat. Noonan shouldn't be in trouble. That LT set that operation up to fail. Proud of this judge. Pink hoodies. John, lawyer you know his life. Oh yeah, John, because you weren't on the other day. A bunch of people were asking for some kind of pink hoodie merch because we were talking about that olive green one. So John is on this one, so I know he's heard it now. No excuses. This does not help with trust for police without body cams. He should have been truthful. Yeah, I hope they get body cam. It can build trust. And I know some people think cops don't like body cam. A lot of cops do like it. It protects them as well. Were the other cops there on her side? I don't know the answer to this. That's why I said they're not there for the person in the defense chair, or maybe they were. I don't know. Massachusetts/New Hampshire lawyer here. I worked in that courthouse. Justice served. What about custody of Caden? So heartbreaking. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. But Darlene, thank you so much for joining us, for sharing. I'll tell you, I'm always shocked at how many lawyers are in the chat, you know, that are out there, that come up to me and talk to me at these events and when I'm out, or reach out to me for other things and connect. I always love to hear from another lawyer, and it's so cool to see you guys watching there. And I love it because, you know, I get fact checked and people are like, you know, spot on, or I'd see it differently. Of course, lawyers can, but I love it. Feels like I got accountability partners too. I didn't know anything about this case except what I've heard here or seen here. Wishing Kelsey the best with her son. Thank you, Peter, for all you do. I appreciate it, Birdie. Peter, my lawyer friend came to me for legal troubleshooting. Thank you, LYK University. Kelsey plus Karen podcast, guys. That's awesome. Hey, it's a real thing. To study and be involved with and pay attention to these real cases makes a difference. Lawyers could benefit from it. I know I do. Can't imagine what it's like to come down from such an emotionally charged moment. It is really, really hard to understand or to even explain. Because it's work, of course. It's people's lives, of course. It's very important, of course, but it's really hard to explain the amount of work and effort that goes into it. And then when something happens, good or bad, what you feel like, and you wrestle with that way longer than just today when the verdict is read. Lawyer, you know, chat, you know, loving your kindness. Chat, you know, and Peter, blessings to all. Thank you, Old Lady Bakes. And Amber, thank you for gifting 5 more Lawyer You Know memberships on the way out. That's all we got. 2 for 1 today. We got 2 videos, 1 for the closing arguments breakdown and 1 for the verdict. Hit that like button before you guys go, please, if you wouldn't mind. And if anybody's new from this case, I love hearing about it in the comments. And let me know what's next, because Courtney Clenny was the next one on our docket, and I don't think that's starting for another month. So I'd love to jump into another trial. I find trials so interesting to cover with you guys. One that starts Monday would be the best of both worlds. Jumping into one more difficult, and I don't think I'm going to be doing a video tomorrow. I'll probably take a break. Maybe we'll do our members only live, like I said. So if you're a member, make sure you check out the members only community page. TJ Wilson said, I'm an LEO. Good cops love body cams. Yeah, people think I hate on law enforcement officers sometimes. I really try not to. I love law enforcement officers. Tons of friends and family members that are. Tons of law enforcement officers here. There was a law enforcement officer at my TED Talk that came up and talked to me afterwards and thanked me and said, you're 100% right. We need X, Y, and Z. So I love law enforcement officers. Absolutely love. Doesn't mean I'm not going to call out one that I think makes mistakes, or one that I find less credible than somebody else, or one like Proctor who I think just is a bad apple, period. Can she sue Justin? I would need a lot more information to make a call on that. And welcome, Heather, to the membership crew, and everybody else that joined. Yes, Nurse of Interest, this is how I feel as well. Okay, that's all we got. Okay, one more thing. Where's the members only community page? It is on YouTube. So if you click YouTube, there's different tabs, and I think it's called the community page. It used to be. It might be called Posts or Wall or something now. Somebody else in the chat maybe can help you out with it. That's more YouTube savvy than me, but that's where we will post it. All right. You guys are the best. I appreciate you coming on another wild ride. This one really was a roller coaster all the way down to the verdict reading. That felt like the most roller coaster verdict reading that we've had so far. Hit the like button, subscribe. Love you guys. Till next time, I am out of here. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe.
You can also follow us on Instagram, X, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast featuring new episodes every week. And if you have a case that you want to personally talk to us about in your life, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, truck accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com.
And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, the lawyer you know.